Bitcoin mining can reduce the electricity cost for everybody. I was not only saving 3,000 euros for the heating oil, but I gained another 1,000 euros in surplus. So in total, I was 4,000 euros cheaper to heat with Bitcoin mining instead of heating oil. It's cheaper, it's better for the environment. It's really hard to argue that Bitcoin mining is bad.
So you got paid for heating your house?
You use the heat as a main product, and through that, Bitcoin mining becomes profitable in many places here in Europe as well. You produce your Bitcoin yourself for mining KYC-free Bitcoin. 170,000 terawatt hours of primary energy we use every single year. 50% of that energy we use to heat.
What chance is Bitcoin mining giving us for the environment? What kind of positive impact will Bitcoin mining has for our planet?
I think the perfect example is maybe my personal story, how I got to Bitcoin mining. I was living in 2020 in a single family home here in Tyrol in Austria, and I was heating with heating oil, a pretty old heating standard. And then I started Bitcoin mining, and these Bitcoin miners got really, really hot, and I figured maybe I can heat my home with that. So I built a prototype to bring down the noise level. And after the first heating season, I was pretty stunned because I was not only saving 3,000 euros for the heating oil, but on top, onto the higher electricity bill, I gained another 1,000 euros in surplus. So in total, I was 4,000 euros cheaper to heat with Bitcoin mining instead of heating oil. And a very positive side effect is because I used 100% hydro power here in Tyrol, I had zero CO2 emissions compared to the heating oil. So for me, it was an absolute no-brainer. It's cheaper, it's better for the environment. So if you experience that once, it's really hard to argue that Bitcoin mining is bad. And yeah, after the second successful heating season, it was for me really a no-brainer. And I thought, why is not everybody heating like that, or more people heating like that? And I started to build prototypes and started 21 Energy to build plug-and-play Bitcoin heaters for the broader market because there was nothing on the market which was usable.
Wait, so you usually have a $3,000 bill in paying for the heating system, but you installed the Bitcoin miners and then you got paid for heating your house. Did I get that correct?
So I paid usually per winter 3,000 euros or dollars for heating oil, and I just burned the heating oil, so it is the central heating system keeps the house warm. And then I completely shut down the oil heating system. That's not 100% true. I still had 5% for warm water for showering and stuff like that. But I did zero heating and did 100% heating with Bitcoin mining. So I adapted some Bitcoin miners that they are not loud as a motorcycle. So I also can run them directly in my living room. And I got down to 40, 50 decibel. Now we are at 35 decibels. It's like even quieter than a bridge. And I was running the Bitcoin miners directly in the living room. And of course, I had a drastic increase in the electricity bill because I was using 16,000 kilowatt hours of electricity to heat my home. But back then I earned more with Bitcoin mining than the electricity costs me, like 1,000 euros more than the electricity cost was. And I needed zero heating oil to heat, only for the warm water. And so in total, I saved 4,000 euros compared to my previous heating system. And that's how it started.
That's super interesting. I mean, it's also interesting to see when, for example, I live in an apartment in Vienna. Would it be very good for me to turn off the heaters completely and just like plug in the heating systems? Is that something that's more efficient if you're just like living in an apartment in, let's say, Vienna or something like that? Or is it better if you have a house and you can control more of the aspect of it?
It doesn't matter that much if you're living in an apartment or in a single family home. Of course, if you are in a space where are many flats and you pay a fixed amount, for your example, you don't pay for the amount of heat you take, but for the square meters you live in, then of course you don't have an incentive to save energy. But if you pay for your energy yourself, it definitely can make sense. It always depends, of course, on the Bitcoin mining profitability and on your electricity bill costs, and of course on the heating opportunity costs. If you're currently heating your home with heating oil here in Austria, pretty much for everybody who is using heating oil, it would make sense to change to Bitcoin heaters. It would be cheaper and more sustainable. But of course, you have to do the calculations yourself. Does it make sense for yourself? For example, if you are living in Germany or with the highest electricity costs, it can make sense. But in some cases, of course, it doesn't make any sense. But there are no Bitcoin mining farms in Austria or Germany because of the high electricity costs. But Bitcoin heaters are much more efficient than a Bitcoin mining farm because you're using the heat as well. It's not, you don't have waste heat. You use the heat as a main product, and through that, Bitcoin mining becomes profitable in many places here in Europe as well.
It's also a question that I had, like, why don't we have, like, we have hydropower? Why don't we use that for Bitcoin mining in Austria and maybe Germany?
There were a few Bitcoin mining farms in small hydropower plants, but global mining just got so competitive that it's not to only run a Bitcoin mining farm without any waste heat utilization. You have to have electricity prices in the range of 4 cents if you're doing only Bitcoin mining, but it's a completely different model. If you're needing the heat anyway, it's a completely different calculation, because if you already pay, let's say 14 cents or something like that for gas or for oil per kilowatt hour of heat, it's a completely different model. And if you can get here in Austria at the moment, the electricity approximately for 18 to 20 cents. So that's only 4 cents more than the gas or oil. And you only have to earn that, for example, to break even with gas or oil, that you would have the same electricity costs. But so over the last 12 months, for example, Bitcoin heater with an Antminer S19K Pro inside earned approximately 14 cents per kilowatt hour cash back. So if you pay in Austria 20 cents per kilowatt hour, for example, and you get 14 cents back, you have still a loss of 6 cents per kilowatt hour, but it's way cheaper than 14 cents for gas or oil. So in total, you save 8 cents per kilowatt hour compared to oil or gas. But you could also use a variable electric tariff where you have a different electricity price every single hour. For example, I have something like that myself, and I'm heating, for example, especially then when the electricity is cheap, and when the electricity is expensive, I shut down the Bitcoin heater, for example. And we have in our Bitcoin heater our own microcontroller where you can connect with your smart home, or, for example, also variable electric tariffs. That feature is not live yet, but will come online in the next 2 to 3 months, where you can connect your variable electric tariff to the Bitcoin heater, and then you're only running it, for example, when the electricity is below a certain threshold, so you are sure that you are always cheaper or more profitable than your current heating system.
Are those Bitcoin that you mine there KYC free? How does the regulatory body look at that part?
Yeah, you produce your Bitcoin yourself. Like you are mining KYC free Bitcoin. You can choose any pool you like with the Bitcoin heater, and it's your part to declare that to the like. You can make different. For example, here in Austria, you can say, okay, I paid 20 cents per kilowatt hour for the electricity, and I got back in with Bitcoin mining 14 cents. But you're still in profit, but because you are still cheaper than oil or gas. But if you now make income report from your mining, you say, okay, I paid 20 cents and I only got 14 cents back. I don't have to pay taxes on that because I didn't make any surplus. Or you could also, in Austria, you have the option to do that, or the other, you pay 27.5 flat tax, and you don't have to make a small calculation with what did you pay for the electricity and what was your income. The regulatory body is not like there is not a Bitcoin heating tax law yet, and probably will take a lot more years to come. The tax authorities, I don't think they have Bitcoin heating on their view at the moment.
This is super interesting. So like a company could, if a company has a big space and they mine a lot, they could actually deduct that from their income and save taxes potentially with that method and accumulate Bitcoin with that. If the income is not positive, but you actually can report a loss with that mining business.
No, like if you're a business, it's a little bit different because before you had to pay, for example, 100,000 euros for oil, and then you're paying 150,000 euros for electricity, but you get, for example, 80,000 euros back in Bitcoin mining rewards or something like that, or probably more. Then, of course, you will pay taxes because you have higher surplus than before. And so, of course, you will pay taxes on your higher revenue. But you also have, maybe you have a lot of tax advantages because you are now not emitting less CO2 emissions because that gets taxed for large companies as well. So you can save potentially taxes by heating with Bitcoin because you have less CO2 emissions with Bitcoin heating instead of the traditional oil or gas heating systems.
Absolutely. I did not thought about that aspect. Yeah, it's really good. It's like whenever I talk about Bitcoin mining, especially on Twitter, the thing that always comes back to me is like, oh yeah, we want KYC free Bitcoin with Bitcoin mining. I don't care if I pay a little bit extra, if it's inefficient. A lot of people go that route for Bitcoin mining. It's an incentive that Bitcoin mining gives you.
Exactly. And Bitcoin heating is also perfect for that. Of course, you have a super silent Bitcoin miner, but it's nothing different than that. Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah, really cool. Let's dive into some other reasons why Bitcoin mining might be really good for the planet and for the grid also. You mentioned it a little bit, and I think we have in Texas probably the most popular example where they work really closely together with the grid, the miners, and how the miners are really they can shut down and ramp up really quickly against like some other industry they cannot do. How do you look at that? What other aspects, grid balancing, or maybe is there something else also that you look at when it comes to positive aspects of Bitcoin mining?
Bitcoin mining, you mine Bitcoin with an ASIC miner. That's an application-specific integrated circuit, and that's nothing else than a supercomputer which is dedicated to one task, and that's producing as much hashes as possible with the lowest amount of energy. And at the same time, you have a 100% efficiency converting the electricity into heat. So that's one very cool aspect of Bitcoin mining, that you don't have any losses by producing the heat through the mining aspect. So you have like 200% efficiency. Of course, that's not possible, but you're doing the calculations and still have 100% of the heat. And at the same time, you get paid depending on which mining pool you are using, but there are mining pools where you get paid exactly for every single calculation. So it doesn't matter if you run the Bitcoin miner 10 seconds, 10 hours, or 10 days, you get exactly, it's a linear function, you get exactly paid for the amount of calculations you did. So you could, for example, if you have solar on the roof, you can also monetize your surplus electricity yourself and have maybe a shorter amortization period by mining your surplus electricity instead of putting it into the grid. And now to the Texas, there are large mining facilities. They are running very new Bitcoin miners, and they try to have a high uptime. But when the electricity is really expensive, they shut down, and that's how they stabilize the electricity grid. We are just starting at the moment. It's also a grid balancing project, but a little bit different than they do it in Texas. Here it's called negative grid balancing, and it works like that. We have a large Bitcoin mining container with a lot of Antminer S9. That's the Bitcoin mining hardware from the year 2017, which is approximately 3 to 4 times less efficient than the newest mining hardware they use in Texas, for example, for grid balancing. But we only run the Bitcoin mining container when there is too much electricity in the grid. And that happens quite often. It happens actually every single day at the moment. Always when the frequency in the grid is over 50 hertz, it always must stay at 50 hertz because we have to consume all the electricity produced exactly at the same moment. And because we are pushing forward the energy transition so fast and we are building so much solar and so much wind energy, we often have too much electricity in the grids. And that's also a problem. And we have to get rid of the electricity, and you get paid to do that. So at the moment, there are, for example, hydro power pumps, power plants, where they put up the water, they pump it back into the mountains again. And if the electricity price is high, they let it down again in the power plant and create electricity. So it's like a very large natural battery. But that's still too less because they build out renewable energies that fast. We need way more capacity to put load onto the grid. So if there is too much electricity, we can get rid of it. And that's how we do the grid balancing. We build Bitcoin mining containers with old mining hardware, which only has an uptime of, in average over the last years, of 30 minutes a day. So our Bitcoin Antminers S9 are running 30 minutes a day, but we get paid by the Austrian power grid to be ready 24/7. You get also paid for that. And then you get paid negative electricity prices. So we get paid to take the electricity because at the moment it's a problem because we have more than 50 hertz in the grid. And that's how we do it. Like we have a mining container ready 24/7. And if there is too much electricity, we power on our Bitcoin mining container and get paid to be available. And we get paid to for the amount of electricity we took. For example, 50 to 100 euros per megawatt hour. And that's how we stabilize the grid. And which is also really cool because we have an additional revenue stream through the Bitcoin mining. We can often do it much cheaper than competitors. And so from that logic, we reduce the electricity costs for everybody in Austria because we can do the grid stabilization much cheaper than others. So Bitcoin mining can reduce the electricity costs for everybody. And I think that's a really cool example to show Bitcoin mining is the perfect fit for the energy transition. We can move forward much faster with the energy transition, and we can do it also much more cheaply than without Bitcoin mining.
That's an amazing example. I didn't knew that was happening in Austria. Like that, that's really cool.
We're just getting started, so it's at the moment we are doing the test runs, and it's not in a large volume at the moment. But we have 17,000 S9s already in our warehouse, so we can build approximately 22 mining containers with a megawatt of consumption, and we will build out hopefully next year a lot of that.
Sorry, I'm still here. My camera just died because I'm hours and hours of podcasting. My camera probably overheated. But let's see how long it runs. So don't be confused if my camera is just turning black. I'm still here. It's not a big problem. Then now people can also see there's my bed going on and there's my my thing going on. I think that's the first time ever it was shown in the podcast. But yeah, it's all right. Yeah, it's a really interesting example. I'm kind of amazed that this is not a bigger story. I'm kind of amazed that not more people are talking about that. Even in Bitcoin, we talk a lot about the monetary aspect. We talk a lot about the Bitcoin ETFs. We talk a lot about the presidential election. But how amazing is that you can just balance the grid? Like it's a utility value of Bitcoin mining that is just, you cannot say anything against that. Like it's just like hard facts that it's good for the grid. It's really good for the electricity cost, and it should be just talked about everywhere. It's interesting that it's not talked about more. How do you see? You probably also are in contact maybe a little bit with the regulators in Austria. How do you look at that? Is that a big story maybe in the coming years, or is that always like under the radar at some point?
I think at the moment it's still very much under the radar. But you only come to Bitcoin if you have a problem. If you don't have a problem, you don't see the solution in Bitcoin, it's very hard to get Bitcoin. And that's like we have at 21 Energy, we have for our Bitcoin heaters, we have two large customer segments. The first large customer segments are Bitcoiners, of course, they get it, why Bitcoin mining is cool and why decentralized Bitcoin mining, not in large mining farms, is cool. And the second large customer segment are people with a solar panel on the roof. And they maybe did, I mean, we get a lot of emails from our customers. They didn't get Bitcoin at all, but they had a problem. They didn't get a contract, so they can put in the electricity, the surplus electricity into the grid. So they had to find a way to monetize the surplus energy for themselves. So, and then they buy a Bitcoin heater. They mine Bitcoin with 100% green energy. They get heat and heat their home, for example. Of course, in winter, you don't produce that much surplus electricity, but still 30% of the solar you produce is in the heating months, and 70% is in the summer when you don't need any more heat. And that's a really cool perspective. And we get a lot of mails from customers. They said they didn't think anything about Bitcoin, nothing good. But if they feel, if they come through the energy perspective to Bitcoin and see, okay, I can monetize my green surplus energy myself and I have heat, on top of that, what can be so bad about Bitcoin? And often people fall really fast and really deep into the Bitcoin rabbit hole if they come through the energy perspective. I think at the moment still the most come through the money or number go up technology aspect, but we got a few cool stories of customers who came through the energy perspective, and I love that. But in general, I think it's still in Europe completely under the radar. But we get more and more problems with the energy transition, and we have high interest for the Bitcoin mining containers. We're just getting started with the negative grid balancing, and we have already a few people from large energy companies which want to take a look at the Bitcoin mining container as soon as it is running. So I think there will be some press coverage and things changing when it gets to the right people, because they have a lot. If they have an energy problem and Bitcoin mining can solve that, they will get it.
I partnered up with Coin Vigilante. This is the most beautiful Bitcoin timepiece that I ever saw created by anyone. Look at that beauty. I love it so much. Coin Vigilante made a perfect Bitcoin watch. That's the perfect, subtle, elegant way to go out there and show that you are a Bitcoiner. And that watch brand is Bitcoin only. And Coin Vigilante just dropped a completely new and amazing Genesis edition of their watch collections. You have the date of the first ever mined Bitcoin block in there, and of course also the block height and which epoch we are currently in. I love the level of detail they put in this masterpiece, and make sure to check out those amazing Coin Vigilante timepieces down in the descriptions. I love those watches so much. If you watch or listen to my podcast on a regular basis, I guess you already bought some Bitcoin. And now the most important step is to keep the Bitcoin. Keep them secure in a hardware wallet. My personal recommendation for hardware wallet is the BitBox. It's super secure. It's simple to set up. It's also a perfect gift for a friend who has still their Bitcoin on an exchange. And you can get a 5% discount with the code Robin at the checkout. Visit bitbox.swiss/Robin to get your BitBox. And the next step is to really level up your sovereignty as an individual. You have to have the most secure self-custody setup. You have to secure your own devices. You have to protect your privacy. You have to set up an inheritance plan. And depending on where you live, you even want to have a plan B, a citizenship where you can move in case something goes really wrong. And through all those steps, the Bitcoin way is guiding you through step by step. And if you visit thebitcoinway.com/partners/Robin, you even get a 30-minute free call to find out how you can level up your sovereignty. Absolutely. When you look at all the developments that's going on right now with Bitcoin mining and with everything, do you think at some point Bitcoin mining will just be a part of everything, like the fridge? Maybe fridge is maybe an interesting example, but like small house gadgets just have like a small Bitcoin miner in them, or like every house has a Bitcoin mining unit in there because it's just like way more efficient to do it. Apartment complexes have always like Bitcoin mining. Do you think that Bitcoin mining is actually so decentralized in the future and so far implemented in so many different ways in houses and stuff like that, maybe even in electric cars, I don't know, that it's like that?
We as a humankind, I think it was 170,000 terawatt hours of primary energy we use every single year. That's oil, gas, electricity, everything combined. And 50% of that energy we use to heat, like we produce heat. It's not 100% for heating, but producing stuff, plastic, asphalt, you need so much heat to produce things. And in total, 50% of the energy we consume as a species is heat. So you can think how large the potential is. At the moment, I think 86,000 terawatt hours a year the mankind needs to produce heat, and Bitcoin mining is, I think, 110 terawatt hours a year. So if we would only Bitcoin mine where we need the heat anyway, we could grow something like 800x and still don't have an own energy footprint because we need the heat anyway. Bitcoin mining can do that with 100% efficiency. You don't have any losses by Bitcoin mining. So if we would mine 100% where we need the heat anyway, we can grow 800x. So I think Bitcoin mining at the moment is a race to the efficiency. And I think Bitcoin mining at the moment, like probably 98% or something like that, or nearly 100% is done in large mining farms. But I think Bitcoin heating or Bitcoin mining where you need the heat in the long run has much better incentive structure, because if you're a mining farm, you have to pay rent, you have to pay Of course, the electricity, you have to pay the staff and you have to write off the Bitcoin miners. But for example, if you now build a new house and you have the option to pay 60,000 euros for a central heating system with a heat pump, or you pay 15,000 for some Bitcoin heaters or 10,000 for some Bitcoin heaters and then have way lower running costs than with the central heating system, it's hard to beat in that case. And you don't have to pay rent, you don't have to pay staff, and you have to pay for the energy anyway because you need the heat to heat. So in total, I think the incentive model is like that, that over the long run, I think it will take a lot of years, but I think in 10 years, maybe we have a significant percentage of hash rate decentralized in private resident houses where the people heat their home or heat their warm water all year around. So, and I think that's way more in align with the Bitcoin ethos, decentralized Bitcoin mining, and I think we are moving there in the future. And yeah, I'm super excited about that and try to build as much stuff exactly for that use case.
Should every hardcore Bitcoiner mine Bitcoin, or like when does it make sense to actually mine Bitcoin outside of using the heat?
Bitcoin is the most powerful network by far. So if you're not into Bitcoin mining, I think it's fine if you don't mine Bitcoin. If you're hardcore into Bitcoin and you want to get every single aspect of it, you're running your full node, you're running your Lightning node, and you want to run a Bitcoin miner, of course, that's an awesome way. And I would definitely support that. But I don't think that every single Bitcoiner has to run a Bitcoin miner. No, I don't think that. But I think we will definitely move into the right direction and decentralize Bitcoin mining more and more.
A big problem is also you don't have access to cheap electricity. You might not want to deal with the problems, like if the device needs to repair something, like you don't want to repair it because you don't know how to do it. How do you look at things like Bitcoin mining as a service, where someone just takes over for you that and you just pay them of the device and you can rent them out? Or like there are different kind of models for that, like probably, I think I've seen like 6 providers already for that in some sort of sense. How do you look at that thing if someone says like, oh, I have my Bitcoin stack, I'm really satisfied with that, but maybe I want to put now, I don't know, 20,000 in a Bitcoin mining as a service thing to have some maybe even passive income for that. Does that make any sense, or is it way better to just put your money in Bitcoin?
I think it always depends to your risk model, also to your tax laws in your country. Also, that can make a big difference. In general, it's of course much more risky. You have several different counterparties, maybe counterparties you don't even know of if your Bitcoin mining hosting provider is only rents his mining farms as well in some other countries. I think you have a lot of risk factors you maybe are not aware of. And often these mining farms where they get super cheap electricity are in countries where you also have probably additional risk factors from the authorities. Maybe they can shut down your mining farm. Maybe they can you get problems at customs when you buy the miners. Like there are a lot of bad stories out there, but of course there are also a lot of good stories out there. It totally depends. Are you trusting your hosting provider 100%? Are you trusting the country where the hosting provider mines Bitcoin? If you keep everything in mind and you're still fine with that decision and taking the risk, of course, it can be a good thing. But mining, like the hosting provider, of course, does it because he wants to earn money. So you have definitely some counterparties which earn money with you, and it can make sense if make more sense. Don't take the risk. Just let the Bitcoin hodl and or heat your home with Bitcoin heaters, and that's totally dependent on your risk profile, of course.
Absolutely, yeah. It's also interesting as you have a Bitcoin company, and I talked about that many times on the podcast, where building a Bitcoin startup maybe has a different kind of challenge to it, because all the Bitcoin investors have Bitcoin, and it's a pretty big hurdle rate to overstep as a startup to grow faster than Bitcoin. And then if you have a company, you also probably have a Bitcoin treasury. Then you also always have to make like, do I invest in that project, or do I just put it on my Bitcoin balance sheet? What is a better decision? How do you balance that as in a company?
For me, exactly the same. Like I had to make the decision 2022. Do I want to hodl or do I want to invest in my own startup with the benchmark of the Bitcoin performance? And I thought if everybody would think like, I don't want to build a Bitcoin startup because maybe I don't outperform Bitcoin, then we would have a problem, because if nobody is building on top of Bitcoin and don't bring new use cases, new hardware, new ways to use Bitcoin or solve problems with Bitcoin or Bitcoin mining, then probably the adoption would happen much slower. So I think if as a startup you bring additional value onto the layer of Bitcoin, you should theoretically outperform the Bitcoin price. And that's the reason I said, let's do it. I invested a little bit, of course, of my Bitcoin stack into the startup to fund it at the beginning myself and don't give away equity too early. And until now, it's like exactly 24 months we're having the startup. It worked out really, really well. We did a funding round this year with an evaluation of over 7 million euros. And at the moment, we outperformed Bitcoin by quite a big margin. But it's, of course, countless numbers of night shifts developing new hardware, doing test runs. It's amazing good energy in the team. Like if you go to a Bitcoin conference, everybody is like in that super good mood. We are going somewhere new. Everybody is excited, and oftentimes I have the feeling at the moment, more the general consensus is it's not that good anymore, or the people are not that happy at the moment with all the crisis we have in the world. But it's always a completely different at a Bitcoin conference, and we have it in the team as well. Like there is so much good energy, and we push things forward, and people work way more hours than they would have to, and everybody is super happy to push things forward. And we have a lot of applications, people wanting to work for us. So in total, it was the best decision ever to start a Bitcoin startup, and I'm super happy. And we are still thinking that we are completely at the beginning. Bitcoin heating, I think, will be a really, really big new branch, but and there is a lot of room for competitors. And of course, we try to take advantage of our first mover advantage and build cool stuff and additional value onto the Bitcoin layer on top.
It's fascinating being in Bitcoin. I was before in IT security, and I was also there at conferences, smaller ones with a high class audience, but also like bigger ones with like all sorts of audience. And the huge difference is the people seems to be actually interested and are actually gathered around the booths. Like in IT security, yes, there are also people coming to a booth and people are interested in companies, but not at the same level as Bitcoin. And sometimes I go because I never have a booth. I'm just like as a speaker there, or a podcaster there. But I just go sometimes through the booth area, and I was like, oh, it's like so full. Like, and people are lining up in front of booths, and like that. If you come from a traditional I don't know, IT security or whatever industry you come from, that's that's unprecedented. Like you don't usually see that. And my insight from the previous conference is like, oh, like Bitcoin is really different. There's a different vibe because everyone that is at a Bitcoin conference actually is there for a personal reason. It's like there are not a lot of people forced there because of the company. Even the people that work for company there are usually really really energetic about it, really passionate about Bitcoin, and you can feel that. And like that's a huge difference, and you can really feel that if you've been in both both worlds before.
Definitely. We were at a lot of Bitcoin conferences this year, and I love it because we can talk to so many people which are excited about Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining and Bitcoin heating. But on the other side, my voice is not used to speaking 8 hours. It's really, really great. But yeah, people are so interested in Bitcoin stuff. It's quite amazing. And yeah, uh, like we are having some talks and conversations with really large companies from DAX and stuff like that, free DAX companies, and every everywhere are popping up Bitcoin task forces also in the really large companies, and that's amazing to see. And you can also feel they are so excited that they can now bring their passion into their traditional job and try to get Bitcoin or Bitcoin mining or Bitcoin heating implemented in their company, and they are super excited. I know there's a company, they have two Bitcoin task force. One is for the treasury, the Bitcoin treasury task force, and there's one Bitcoin energy mining task force. And it's really cool to see that a lot of people are taking their passion into their traditional job and pushing forward Bitcoin.
Absolutely. There's a lot going on. A lot of things that we don't hear on a daily basis about. Like we hear about the big cases, like Scientific, the MicroStrategies, like the big companies getting into Bitcoin. But there's a lot of like middle ground companies which are extremely bullish on Bitcoin, and they're slowly getting in there. They're building the task forces. That's kind of the suddenly part that comes later, where I'm like, oh, like all those companies are in Bitcoin. Yeah, they built the foundation years before anybody even saw that. It's really great to see that. One point to coming back to what we earlier discussed with startups and this hurdle rate of Bitcoin. One question around that I have is, what do you think fundamentally changes if our default currency, our default asset that we use, is no longer fiat but Bitcoin, so no longer depreciating but appreciating in value? How will it change the overall venture capital space, the overall financial space and company space? Is it like a trend towards more quality and less experiments? Could that be like a degrowth phase in the economy? How do you look at that?
For example, if you can get money like MicroStrategy for nearly 0% interest rate and you have an inflation rate of 2%, you don't have to make a very good investment. It's already enough if you make 3% or 2% returns every single year, and you can leverage it up to hundreds of millions. That's quite a good return. So, and if you don't have that anymore because we are on a Bitcoin standard and the humanity gets more efficient, for example, 7% every single year. So let's say we have finished the Bitcoin adoption in 100 years, for example, and everybody is on the Bitcoin standard. And then theoretically, in my opinion, Bitcoin would still increase in 7%, for example, in because the humanity gets more efficient 7% every single year. So Bitcoin is still increasing in infinitely to 7% a year because we get more and more efficient. And maybe if we are on a Bitcoin standard, we get way more faster efficient, and it's 12% or something like that. And if that's your benchmark, I can do nothing and have 7% on my Bitcoin stack. My HODL stack increases 7% in purchasing power every single year. then you have to outperform that. So you will be like all the Bitcoiners are, for example, not buying a lot of new stuff because they know it's probably depreciating what they are buying, and Bitcoin would be appreciating. So, and it's the same from an investment thesis. I think you would have a much higher benchmark, and you would only invest your money where you are pretty certain that it that new thing will bring a lot new value. And I think that will be in total an efficiency increase, because at the moment, if your example, if you get in 100 millions and you only want to do 2% returns, you could fund a company, and the company with 100 millions takes up a lot of resources and a lot of people are now working at that not that good company because they are only doing 2% or something like that, and that takes away resources where we maybe could do a much more efficient things. So I think it's good that we move towards harder and harder money and have a higher and higher benchmark. So I think it will harden our society, and we will build a lot more very high quality stuff, and people expect that the stuff they spend their valuable Bitcoin on will last a very long time, because otherwise it would be always better just to hodl.
Absolutely. And I also have a higher, like even spending Bitcoin, I have a higher standard for that. Like I'm not willing to spend Bitcoin on anything else than like something that really gives me value. And with fiat, kind of that higher time preference, okay, like it's okay. I will get more money. Like that mindset completely changes.
And things get more expensive anyway, so I get more for my money if I buy now something. And that's exactly the problem with the time preference. And of course, if we move on to a Bitcoin standard, that would probably change completely.
Absolutely, yeah. An interesting question that just came up when we talked about Bitcoin. What is for you more important to watch, the Bitcoin hash rate or the Bitcoin US dollar price?
The Bitcoin US dollar price. I think that's the Bitcoin price is the main indicator how the Bitcoin adoption is moving forward. And Bitcoin mining can only follow the Bitcoin price. If the Bitcoin price, for example, goes to $1,000 tomorrow, all the Bitcoin miners will shut down because Bitcoin mining is not profitable anymore. So the Bitcoin hash rate, in my opinion, is only following the Bitcoin price. And so Bitcoin price is the most important metric to watch, in my opinion.
So the short term thing where we've seen the hash rate hitting all time high while Bitcoin is like just like at 50% down from the last all time high, it's just because short term the Bitcoin miners can still manage to be sustainable, and they are basically building up for that new bull cycle. And if this does not come, they kind of have to shut down then.
Like also in Bitcoin mining, we have a lot of fiat money. Like we have a lot of Bitcoin miners which are also traded at the Nasdaq or on stock exchanges, and a lot of fiat money finds their way into Bitcoin mining. And when there is a Bitcoin hype, a Bitcoin bull run, and they get, I don't know, hundreds of millions of dollars. And these hundreds of millions of dollars, they have to start build mining farms. They have to buy purchase agreements from the Bitcoin mining manufacturers and get their hardware delivered maybe 1 or 2 years after they got their money from the stock exchange. So from their shares. So I think you have always some patterns that the money finds their way much later, and they have to run their miners also when they are doing a loss, because they just got that investment in the bull run. So yeah, I think there is a lot of time. Don't remember the word. You have a large latency, let's say it like that, because of the fiat money. And if you would have 100% Bitcoin standard, I think it would it would move pretty much in the rhythm with the Bitcoin price.
Yeah, that's interesting. Also for this year, a lot of things happened. And before we end, we're already kind of soon 1 hour. I want to get this also in, like, how do you look at that year from a Bitcoin standpoint? We had so many new things popping up this year that we never had before, like the Bitcoin ETF in America. We had Bitcoin ETF in Europe since a long time, but in America, in the kind of financial country of the world, it was new. Then we had the president talking about it. We have so many, the halving wars, and there's so many other things that popping up this year. We might hit 100K this year. Let's see how. We were already so close, but yeah, we are now down, I think, like to 92 or something like that. How do you look at that year? What are some of your personal highlights in Bitcoin?
Like, I am bullish for Bitcoin. I think I'm since 2021 pretty much Bitcoin only. I got into Bitcoin 2017 with the super bull market back then in 2017. And I was always very bullish for Bitcoin, but at the moment, I don't know if just a little bit overhyped, but I even got more bullish because game theory is playing out right now in front of our eyes because the US is talking about Bitcoin reserves and stuff like that. All the governments over the world have to think about what would that mean for them. And I think that's beautiful game theory, even though if the US wouldn't do it next year, all other countries have to think about it and maybe try to front run the US. So I think there were planted a lot of seeds in very important mines, and these seeds will hopefully grow into something very orange the next few years. I think we increased the adoption speed pretty drastically because of the US election cycle and what people were talking about Bitcoin, and a lot of very good seeds were planted, and I think the fruits will be earned much later on. Yeah, so love to see that even when you are bullish, some things can happen and you think, okay, it may go much faster than we thought it could happen, the Bitcoin adoption rate. That's the biggest thing for me this year, that it goes much faster than I thought.
Yeah, it's like the suddenly moment where the biggest country, or like maybe not the biggest, depending on what metrics you're looking at, but US definitely in the financial space, the most important one for the Western world, is all of a sudden talking about Bitcoin. That's huge. And they might actually do it. Yeah, really cool. Thank you so much. I have one question that I always ask my guest. What can we learn from you besides Bitcoin?
Thing you love, because when you are doing the stuff you are loving, you get really good at it, and it's okay if you work overtime because you love the thing anyway. So that's always a really good investment, and I'm super thankful that I found a way to work 24/7 for the thing I love. And I think it's really hard to create additional value on Bitcoin, but Bitcoin mining is definitely one part of that. And yeah, do the stuff you love, and Bitcoin brings so many solutions to so many problems we have, and energy transition is one of them. And yeah, innovate and do the stuff you love.
Really cool. I love that message a lot. Perfect. Then our end routine is in the podcast where the previous guest is asking a question for the next guest without knowing who the next guest actually is. The question for you is, what is a time in your life that you got lucky outside of Bitcoin?
And I got lucky. Mm,
Because we all got lucky because
yes,
we understood Bitcoin so early.
I think I got lucky because my dad was watching with me as a child online poker. And so I started playing online poker really early. From 12 years on, I was playing online poker. And that learned me so much about game theory, mathematics, statistics, which helped me all over my career, over my life. And I think I got really, really lucky that I started this the poker career or poker way with my dad very, really, really, really young. Yeah, was very lucky.
There were I think there were 2 poker tables in El Salvador at the Adopting Bitcoin conference. I'm not a poker player, so I obviously didn't play because I don't want to lose my sats. But I played a lot of chess there. It was really fun. The El Salvador Bitcoin conference, I can recommend to everybody. It's a long trip for Austria because I was, I think, on the road for like 24 hours, something like that. It's a long flight, layovers and stuff like that, but it's definitely worth it.
I will definitely go there. That's for sure. I don't know when, but I will go there for sure.
November is the next one. I will be there. I hope I see you also there in next November. It's a year there, so you have a lot of time to prepare.
Yes, a year is a good amount of time.
Perfect. Then, yeah, thank you so much, Max, for being on. Before I let you go, where can people find you, ask you questions, find the company, and read more about you?
Thank you very much. I highly appreciated the conversation we had. On our website, 21energy.com, you can find calculators, for example, and a lot of information about Bitcoin heating, and you can look it up. Does it make sense for your circumstances, for your energy prices or not? And yeah, or just subscribe to the newsletter. Everything on our website, 21.
Perfect. Then thank you so much for being on. Also, thank you so much for everyone that's watching and listening, for joining us today. As always, I'll be back tomorrow with another episode. Bye-bye.